Jesuits have influenced Hollywood and the film industry since its very inception. Check out this document, this essay, this scholastic essay, I should say, written by Henry Schnitzler. He is a member of the Department of Theater Arts at UCLA, and this was actually published by Johns Hopkins. And he talks about a Jesuit priest called Anastasius Kircher, who invented the magic lantern, which was the first device to project images. Kircher's student, another Jesuit, Gaspar Schott, documented these advancements, which later paved the way for motion pictures, which is what our whole movie industry is based on. Another Jesuit, Claude Francis Millier de Chalais, discovered that the human eye perceives light and color rather than objects in motion, which was a foundational principle of filmmaking. But why would the Jesuits, a religious order, invest so much in visual storytelling? According to Encyclopedia Britannica, Jesuit theater was specifically designed, not surprising, to counter the Protestant Reformation. And we see this as well in this academic article that Henry Schnitzler wrote for the Johns Hopkins University Press. He writes about the educational system the Jesuits created, how they had become the schoolmasters of Europe. Their education was to serve as a fighting force in the struggle against the new faith, meaning the Protestant Reformation. Jesuits' performance was to be an irresistible appeal to the senses and emotions rather than to the intellect and reason. The spectator was to be virtually hypnotized by a concerted attack of all known theatrical devices until he surrendered his entire being to the drama's spiritual message. They shrewdly disguised it under a colorful cloak of splendid entertainment. There was not a single theatrical genre that could not, at some time or place, be seen in the Jesuit theater, even if those genres were not even closely religious. These genres were admitted to the Jesuit schools only as long as they could be made to serve the order's, listen to this, never-changing aim. The Jesuits saw the theater as a powerful weapon for the implementation of counter-reformatory propaganda. So it created the Jesuit school theater. It was in every way a propaganda theater used for propagandistic ends. These were naturally more conspicuous during the first decades of the order's existence, when new ground had to be won, chiefly by reaching huge audiences and impressing them with the spiritual message of Roman Catholicism. So let's fast forward to today. The entertainment industry operates in really much the same way. It's appealing to the emotions and senses, using Hollywood as a vehicle to relay a message and change society.
So I always like to think of it as like, I've got them sitting there, whip a little message at them, whip a little moral at them, whip a little of what my view of the world is, because that's what every good filmmaker does.
But are the Jesuits still involved in Hollywood now? Absolutely. This clip from Jesuits in America, a documentary, explains more. Link in the description to get yourself a copy of this documentary.
Some believe that Hollywood movies are really a modern version of what was known as Jesuit theater in centuries past, where the order communicated ideas through dramatic plays. The book, Jesuit Hollywood by Sean Wilcock, documents how Jesuits used theater as part of the Counter-Reformation to refute the anti-papist dramas inspired by Martin Luther. Wilcock writes that the Jesuits saw the theater as having a very great purpose in their schemes to promote Jesuit religious propaganda to the masses. Far from being a minor instrument for teaching, the Jesuits incorporated the use of dramas, dance, and opera in their schools and missions around the world. In the 20th century, they were even responsible for creating the official production code for making movies in Hollywood. Also called the Hays Code, after Congressman William Hays, it was originally intended to prevent immoral practices from being communicated on film. The code was developed by Catholic publisher Martin Quigley, along with a Jesuit priest named the Reverend Daniel Lord. The code was upheld for some 20 years by a Jesuit-educated Catholic named Joseph Breen, who became the central figure associated with the moral boundaries imposed on the film industry. At one point, Breen was even said to have more influence over world opinion than Hitler, Mussolini, or Stalin because of the tremendous power he had over the content of Hollywood movies.
And the way in which they captured the mind was through Jesuit theater. Now, this is where you come in.
Hollywood.
There was a Jesuit, and his name was Kino. Now, in German, Kino is a bioscope, is a theater. And he invented an instrument which, through flashing lights, could cast images on a screen.
Interesting.
And that became the movie.
Wow.
Projector.
So, yes, so the Jesuits became not only the schoolmasters, they also became the masters of the theater.
Wow.
And
They were the first master class.
Yes. And where they couldn't infiltrate directly, they used the theater. Now, there's a high probability that Shakespeare might not even have been a literal person, but was a pseudonym for someone in the high esoteric circles like Sir Francis Bacon, for example. And he was a Rosicrucian, so he would have a high esoteric knowledge and would probably be able to write something like Macbeth or one of them. And once you divert the mind into this esoteric fairy tale world, then you can implant anything else. Now, that's your line, so
Exactly.
I'm not going to go there.
You're speaking my language, but that is one thing that I think really is tying all of these different, I mean, you think of all the different production companies, all the different people involved, all the different span. I mean, there's armies of people. How are you getting all their messages similar?
Army is a very good name. Now, the Jesuits are also a military organization.
I was thinking about that. Napoleon called the Jesuits an army instead of a religious organization.
Well, Napoleon was a high Mason because he put all of his family into high secret society positions. But that being as it may, they then created all the great schools like Georgetown University or Fordham University, or many of them are not directly linked to them, but actually through the committees controlled by them. So let's say that a large proportion of the world of education today is based on the philosophy of the Jesuits. And they are the ones that train the presidents, whether that be whoever, Donald Trump.
Yeah, there's enough evidence out there that they have all been parts and bits of these
They've
things.
all
Yes.
been part of it. We don't have to go into all of them, but yes, they're all somehow associated and trained in this, and they are high Masons. Now,
Is it
once
the same? Jesuits and Masons are the same?
No.
Okay.
Masons are an organization that at its basis should actually be Protestant. But this is the beauty of the deception. You create an organization, then you ban it.
Right.
So
Make it intriguing.
Rome officially banned the Masonic order and said it was of the devil. All Masons are from the devil. While every single cardinal in the Vatican was a Mason.
Yeah.
So
Pretty hypocritical.
that's pretty hypocritical.
They're true, though.
That's true. So that is how you draw them in. As long as you're at the top, controlling the situation and controlling the teachings, then you have drawn in the Protestant world, and you are actually controlling it without them knowing it.
So I think from what I remember from watching your Total Onslaught series is that the Roman Catholic Church technically is at the helm of all of these secret societies.
Yes.
How so? How come?
Well, they have these two orders. The one that still remain to this day, and that is the Jesuit order, which has a general, which is generally called the Black Pope, and he has absolute authority.
And do we know who this Black Pope is?
Yeah, it's public knowledge
Yes.
currently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and they change regularly as time goes on, but basically their power is absolute. And then you have the Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta are also a military order. Both of them are military orders. Now, if you take the Knights of Malta, they have the Maltese cross, but they're subject to the Jesuits. So there were actually physical wars in order to control this issue. So eventually the Knights of Malta became subject to the Jesuits, and they work in unity. And then you have many sub-orders within the Opus Dei and all of these that also swear allegiance to the papacy, or the Knights of Columbus, which are a Catholic organization, promising to bring Catholic ideas into politics, etc., etc., and you belong to one or the other. And if you look at the history of presidential candidates, they will either come from an Opus Dei background or a Georgetown background or a Fordham background or any one of those. So the Knights of Malta are a huge organization, and they call themselves the Hospitallers of St. John's, and they have the Maltese cross as their symbol. I mean, now, if you take the kings of Europe, they all wear Maltese crosses. They're nothing other than vassals to the Pope. And they control vast organizations and vast financial organizations, and probably most of the great theaters and sports clubs. They all are owned and controlled. I wouldn't say all, but the majority controlled by Knights of Malta. That brings the philosophy into the world.